This is the Roots and All podcast, and I'm your host, Sarah Wilson. Join me as I talk about all aspects of gardening with some of the top horticulturists from around the world. Hello and welcome to Roots and All. Have you ever wondered who answers the gardening questions that stump the rest of us? This week, I'm chatting to Leigh Hunt, Principal Horticultural Advisor at the RHS, about what goes on behind the scenes of the Society's advice service, the questions gardeners ask the most, and what those thousands of inquiries reveal about the way we're gardening in a changing climate.
So I'm the Principal Horticultural Advisor for the RHS, which is quite a mouthful, but basically day to day I'm part of a team who answers gardening questions from the RHS members, and they send in a lot of questions, which is great and challenging, but we get over usually 100,000 inquiries a year in terms of the amount of questions that we answer. And they can be on everything because, as you can imagine, with that many people looking in their gardens, they come up with all sorts of interesting stuff. And that's what keeps us on our toes and keeps it fresh for us.
Yes, I bet it does. I mean, that is an awful lot of inquiries. I mean, how many members of your team are there?
We've now got 17 people. So some of them are part-time, but there's 17 of us. And it's interesting because we've now got to the point where they're based at all RHS gardens. So if people don't know, we've got the base at Wisley, which is based in Surrey. And then there's Rosemore Garden down in Devon, Bridgewater Garden up near Manchester and Salford. Over the Pennines, there's Harlow Car Garden at Harrogate. And then down near Chelmsford, we've got the RHS Hyde Hall Garden. So 5 of them. We've usually got 1 to 2 people based at each of those gardens as well. So there are desks at all gardens because we love speaking to people in person. It's amazing how often people start with an inquiry and they'll give you, particularly if it's written, a bit of information about what they think. But of course, the great thing about seeing people in person is you develop that conversation. You can ask more and get the information about when was it planted, why was it planted, what were they trying to do. And it means that not only do we get more information to help them with their inquiry, but I think people get a better answer. We like to think that people go away not just with an answer, but kind of empowered to do the next step, that their green fingers grow.
Yeah, well, that was what I was going to ask you, actually. Where do your inquiries come? So obviously you get the in-person, face-to-face ones. How else do people contact you?
Yeah, it's, of course, changed a bit over the years, but we still do telephone calls throughout the week. You can go on the RHS website and fill out a form. So that's the kind of email version that we do. And there's the desk version. But also we go to flower shows as well. So almost 25,000 of those inquiries will be people coming up to us at the desk at flower shows and having a chat.
And I'm guessing it's only open to members, isn't it, this service?
You're right. So sadly, like a lot of things, it has to be paid for. But the RHS membership does that. And it means that we can keep it free, at least for our RHS members. So as well as getting into the garden and getting the garden magazine and going into the 200 plus partner gardens, they get free gardening advice from the experts. So members go to the RHS website, just at /my advice, and then they can easily get all the details of, where to go to the desk, which flower shows we're at, and also the details to log in. So we try and make it as easy as possible for anyone to get our advice as we can. There are 17 horticultural advisors who have kind of frontline staff, but of course, what they're actually accessing as well are the scientists and other experts at the RHS. So some of those will be routed directly to our plant health team and our botanists or horticultural taxonomists, as we call them. But, when we need to get to a fruit expert or someone who's been growing Chinese plants in the streamside garden at Bridgewater, we can go and find them and have a chat as well.
And do you have any data on average how many queries the typical member submits during, say, I don't know, either a year or during the term of their membership?
So per year, it's probably less than one per member. Yet, the funny thing with that is that, of course, some people use this a lot more as well. So we do really have a few regulars who contact us pretty much on a daily basis. So it is there on a kind of need basis, if you like. And some people drift in and out. So if they've got a project on, like they're replanting a bed, we'll hear a lot more from them, and then they might go quiet. Other people, it's maybe because they've got a new house or they've moved in and they've got a balcony for the first time that they're trying to grow containers and veg on. So it's interesting. Often the amount they contact is almost echoes their lives. In many ways, you'll know that gardens are a reflection of people's lives and personalities. And we definitely sort of see that as people come to us.
And so I'm guessing you get a huge variety of questions. And before we sort of dig into the type of things people are asking, can you tell me a little bit more about what resources you can draw on? So I'm guessing there's a lot of kind of resources that already sit within your team. But if you were to get a specialist question or something that you weren't that au fait with, where would you then go to verify your answers?
It's a good question because so many people come up to you and will ask a question. And then are almost surprised if you don't know the answer immediately. As I like to say back to them, I'm not omnipotent yet, but I'm working on it. So, and it's like every day is a school day to an extent answering gardening questions, not just because the question is very tricky, but it's sometimes the way that people ask it, the what they want to know, that whether it's the science angle about physiologically how something works. So it does send you running off in all locations to get the information. On a day-to-day basis, it's funny. Sometimes we are like the human Google, where we're sat behind the screen kind of going, oh, let me Google that and find the answer. So, in a way that takes away some of the mystique. But of course, the bit that we then do with that is use our own knowledge and our own, whether it's our educational background. So I was trained at Kew Gardens, but we've got other people who on the team have worked as garden designers, have been lecturers themselves in horticultural courses. So broad range of knowledge right through the industry as well as the different styles of training that we've done. So that then means that we might go from kind of the facts that we're finding on the internet and books and our own resources that are squirreled away and going to each other, right? Across the team, I know we've got over 650 years of experience in gardening. What do you think? And then from that point, if it's not getting an answer, I'll start to think, right, well, is it another specialist field that we've got within the RHS science team? So as I mentioned, we've got botanists and plant health, but there are soil specialists, there are physiological specialists who can do things like tell us which plants cool the air best or which plants capture pollution out of the air best as well. And so that means I can get to a wider field. There's the deeper information resources that we've got at the RHS. So the RHS Lindy Library is one of the biggest horticultural libraries in the world. It's amazing still what is in those books that you don't necessarily readily see on the shelves of places like Waterstone. So, for example, someone will often say, how big does that tree grow? And I'll be going back to the Bean series of trees and shrub books because that writer would often talk about specimens around the country and the ultimate height that he'd seen them at that time. So that will give me an indication of how big around the country those trees get. So there's those books and resources, and then it goes beyond that as well to the wider teams of, I think our best example is our fruit expert, who's Jim Arbery, and he really lives and breathes all fruit, and particularly apples. He's one of those rare people who can look at an apple at 20 paces and tell pretty much what it is. And through our fruit identification service, regularly through the winter, he'll identify more than 200 different cultivars of apples. So, he is one of those people we think we just need to clone because we don't know who's going to replace him. He is that unique. So that's Jim Arbery, our fruit specialist. So when we kind of get beyond that, we're aware that there are groups of plants that within the RHS we just don't grow so much. So where would we look next? And then sometimes that's to a specialist. And for example, when Michael Marriott, the rose expert, worked quite a lot at David Austin, we would ask him questions. And beyond that, sometimes it's national collection holders, because you realise that someone who specialises in growing just one group of plants, tries to grow everything in that back garden for many years, is going to know more than anyone about that plant. So, still an understanding. We might be called the experts, that there are definitely times when we really are, that there are people out there with such detailed specialist knowledge that we would definitely defer to them.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you actually, and you said you sort of consult the tree guide to get the average kind of heights across the country. And I was going to ask you, how do you cope with there being more kind of site-specific inquiries?
Yeah, I think most of our questions start with going, basically, where do you live? Sun or shade? What's your soil like? What's growing around you as well? Sometimes it builds up a picture when people don't have plants in the garden about what grows well. So I'm building up a picture in more formal terms. So tell me basically what your region is, so I can understand that regional pattern. So very broadly, to kind of give an illustration of that, if we think of timings of when you get last frosts in spring, that will vary in 6 weeks across the country from Cornwall up to Scotland. So I kind of need to know where you live just to get a general picture of your local conditions are like. And then those questions about things like soil type, sunshade, is it against a wall? That's going to build a picture of microclimate. So only with those things in place can then I begin to perhaps suggest properly why something's not growing well or what to grow there. So yeah, tell me about your garden. It's the most important thing, really, that people can talk about to me to make it easier for me to give people an answer to their question.
I mean, it makes perfect sense. And as you say, I guess the more data you can gather and the more information, the better you can kind of answer the questions. So moving on to the actual questions, A, do you monitor this? And B, can you tell me what it is? Do you kind of look at what people are asking regularly? And I'm guessing that varies year to year and season to season. But do you have some really sort of common inquiries that you deal with the most?
There's definitely common questions over time. So really things that you'd perhaps even expect, but things like, how do I prune my wisteria? That's perhaps one of the top perennial questions. And dry shade is the other one. What do I grow in dry shade? So those would be the kind of top two questions. And then we get the top, what we would refer to as genus or plants. So apples and tomatoes tend to be very high up on the kind of edible side. And then it's interesting, we get a lot of woody shrubby things. So things like Camellia rhododendron acer being very high. We think, to put that in context, one of the reasons people often ask about shrubs and trees most is because it's something that grows with you for a long time, has been quite expensive to buy, and therefore you've got a lot of investment on it being successful. But you might notice some gaps in that. So roses are still very high up, for example, and a lot of the other vegetables like potatoes, again, quickly come up in our top tens. But yeah, it's interesting. The shrubby things are the focus. And that's shifting as well over time. It's interesting. We do get patterns that change year to year.
I do wonder about that, and it kind of brings up an awful lot of questions. I'm guessing, many of which you can't probably even answer. But, I wonder whether, because the style of gardening has perhaps shifted away from shrubs more, whether that might become less of an issue, or whether it's because of the age profile of the membership. And as that changes over time, will that change what you get inquiries about? I mean, it's a fascinating thing, I'm guessing, to track, because it kind of mirrors your membership and what they're up to in their gardens.
This is where also our website data gets really useful, because of course anyone can come to the RHS website to get information for free. The way it kind of works is we're doing all this work with the members behind the scenes, but of course it completely informs how we would write our advice on the website, because we know if it helps the members, it'll help gardeners generally. So making that information available and answering the questions that we receive is really useful. But of course, you stick it on the website, it's open to the whole world, very different demographics, and yet a lot of the same patterns keep coming up. So at the moment, it doesn't matter whether it's our inquiries or whether it's the website. The top hitter is hydrangea. So people are currently looking to see how to support their hydrangeas. And we can see that general pattern of it's been a very hot year, it's been very dry, hydrangeas have not been at their peak, they needed a lot of extra care and water to do well. So it's interesting. So if you were programming something like Gardens World TV, you might focus on what's trendy, what people are talking about. It's interesting, our patterns get beneath that. They tend to show what people are up to in their gardens more broadly. And often those trends like perennials, they are represented, but it's interesting how deep they are and how much more the shrubby woody stuff comes up high. And again, how much the grow your own comes up high. But I think one of the reasons for that is that we can look at this information and we begin to see there's something else going on, and that's why people want help. Often it's because they're anxious about something, so got a question, they want reassurance. And indeed, when I kind of took some of our data and started to work with one of our internal AI things, it said our most popular question was, can you help me? And it's such a revelation because it's
just
so
literally
bloody
help.
obvious. Yes. And yet I realizing, yes, it's because people need that, if you like, our judgment on what's going on, but then the support that we can offer in a very practical human way. And that's what people need. It's like, what am I doing? Because often people carry surprising amounts of guilt, and they attach that sort of care that you might want to give a child to plants as well. So you want to get it right. You don't want to fail. So that's why they're looking for all that reassurance as well. That varies hugely person to person. So someone might feel it more or less keenly, but it's interesting. It's definitely there, and it's definitely not a unique thing.
Well, I mean, you mentioned hydrangeas. I'm guessing you are fielding a lot of queries at the moment about the weather, aren't you?
Yes, actually, it's fascinating. I've been doing a bit of deep research into the drought patterns. And of course, perhaps no surprise, what we would refer to as inquiries about drought and high temperature injury, because we're already on nearly the fourth heat wave. They are very prevalent this year and most keenly felt throughout our inquiry patterns. Interestingly, it's even more sharp than in 22 when we had the days over 40 degrees, because it's been going on so long. The big surprise, though, was when I looked at drought inquiries since 2020. And last year, 25, was actually one of the years where we saw most recorded drought inquiries by the advisor. So that's how they note a member's inquiry to be. And it's interesting to me because it was very hidden what was going on last year. We had above average temperatures, but nothing spectacular. We had a significantly dry spring and prolonged dry spells, but it wasn't without rain. So a lot of people didn't really notice that plants were struggling until too late. And if you talk about when these drought inquiries were logged, it wasn't just through the summer months, as you'd expect. We're still recording drought inquiries in January, February, March, because it's things like camellias that did not flower because they were dry when forming their flowers in the previous July to September. So that's the advantage of having data recorded by our experts, is they're capturing things that go well beyond when often people are noticing it. So 25 turned out to be an extraordinary year for drought, even though it wasn't the hottest, driest year. But people missed the cues, if you like. There wasn't enough kind of like, oh my God, it's not raining enough and it's too hot. So that the subtler things were missed and plants did not do so well. So it does begin to point since 2020 that a changing climate, the needing to adapt to the new climate that we've got is happening very rapidly, and it's difficult to keep up. And indeed, people are talking about mitigating it as well. We get more inquiries about, how do I create a shady area? How do I capture rainfall? My lawns are already brown, so can I do more no-mow or create more of a wildlife lawn area, if you like, or mini meadow? Because they know that that's going to carry on looking interesting when a brown lawn would not. So it's interesting that there's definitely that shift in people not just coping, but actively making change, using their green fingers to think about how do they garden in the future.
Yeah, that's encouraging. And I'm guessing that you are also getting less queries about slugs and snails this year.
Yeah, that's true. Although we're very lucky, we have at the RHS Dr. Slug. So Hayley Jones, our Dr. Hayley Jones, did her PhD on slugs. So she knows all the different species. She knows that out of about 40 species, only 9 actually actively eat plants. A lot of them are just recyclers in the garden, that sort of thing you'll find in your compost bin. So she's been quite revolutionary in the way that we're thinking about slugs as part of biodiversity, not just these terrible things that damage all our plants. And again, how do we adapt our gardens and grow the right plants that are perhaps not so damaged by slugs?
Yeah, it's good. It's good that people are kind of looking at that overall cultural growing sort of experience so that they can, like you say, mitigate the problems. And the other thing I was going to ask you was, do you ever kind of learn from the queries? And I'm thinking maybe, you might get a sudden flurry of inquiries about a particular bug, for example. I'm guessing that can highlight you to an issue maybe before anyone else has picked up on it.
Very much, yes. Quite regularly, we'll get reports from our RHS members. Sometimes those will be new things to science as well. But the things that people might know about as we start to get the first instance of recording of pests that have been sent in. So the big example of this would be box tree caterpillar moth. So the moth is the box tree moth, and then the caterpillar is the one that does all the eating of box. That was kind of known, but really it was the first instance was recorded when we were sent a sample from Wimbledon, and we've then been able to track that spread. And it's the same, we track for things like lily beetle, rosemary beetle, and then another one we've been working on recently is Buddleia aphid as well. So again, that one, thankfully, that's not so problematic as the box problem. It just makes the leaves a bit crinkly and they grow out. But again, it was something only a few years ago we started to see. So some of those are new things. Some of those are problems that are taken off over time, but have become more readily seen in gardens by gardeners. So it is this thing where, yes, it's interesting. People, in effect, they might be sending us questions, but you could also call them research assistants, where they're going out into their garden going, that's a bit strange, I'll send it to the RHS. And then all those points of data that they're sending help build a picture. And then when we can identify it, sometimes do research, certainly get the information together and out to people about what to do on a problem much more quicker than would be possible without all that information that's being sent in to us.
Yeah, that feedback's invaluable, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I was going to ask you before I let you go, have you had any queries that have particularly had you stumped, or anything new that you've just gone, wow, I had no idea that even existed, or that was a problem?
It's funny because you always get new and interesting things. So only a few weeks ago, we were sent a little sample from a prisoner. So literally a person at their Majesty's pleasure. And in a little kind of package, we had a woody core. And then we were told in the letter that this was from a carrot from the canteen. And so we did a bit of research, and they were basically asking, is a woody core an unusual thing in a carrot? And the thing about carrots is as they get bigger and age and perhaps don't have enough water, they will develop a woody middle. It's the bit when you cut through a carrot, you might see the central part of it. Often we don't see that in the carrots that we buy. But the curious thing was that the prisoner had been eating baby frozen carrots. And that the bit that I learned is that baby frozen carrots are probably not baby carrots at all. They're taken and processed where they shave the bigger carrots down to make little carrots and then they freeze them. So there you go. They're not your average baby carrot at all. They are fake baby carrots in frozen packets.
Who knew? I mean, that's not even kind of something you would grow in your garden. So you really do deal with all sorts, don't you?
Really do. But it certainly taught me a lot about how to get juicy carrots as well, which is basically, grow them young, eat them young, and that's probably the best way.
Thanks to Leigh for taking us behind the scenes of the RHS Advice Service and sharing what thousands of gardeners' questions can teach us about the way we grow. If you enjoyed today's episode, you might also like episode 210, Gardening in a Changing World, and episode 321, Weathering It All. You'll find links to both in the show notes, and as always, thank you for listening. Next up is Benny with his Insect of the Week.
Mexican grass carrion wasp. Scientific name, Isodontia mexicana. Today's insect of the week is an insect that's very close to my heart. In fact, it's so close that I got it tattooed on me, on my chest. It's a non-native species that arrived into Europe in the 1960s, accidentally in timber or plant material, potentially bamboo stems. It is an incredible thing. And if we start with the etymology, Isodontia comes from Greek, meaning equal teeth, relating to the mandibles. The second word, the epithet mexicana, comes from Latin and relating to being from Mexico, but it does also come from the Americas in general. This is a North American species as well as a Central American one. So it, as I mentioned, it arrived into Europe in the 1960s, we think, first recorded in southern France. We feel that it was kind of not so successful for the first few decades, or if not, it was very under-recorded. And around 2000, it started to become much more widely spread and visible, perhaps with the climate changing. And in 2016, the first record of this species being in the UK was found by David Notton, who at the time was working in the London Natural History Museum. A year later, I found this curious-looking wasp in the Eden Nature Garden in Clapham, so we believe we had the second record of the species in Britain. And it's very exciting. It's known as a thread-waisted wasp, and if you see the image of it, or if you see one in real life, you'll notice there's a long thread between the upper part of the body, the thorax and the abdomen, the lower part of the body. And this one is a grass carrion wasp because it lines its nest cavity with grass. It also plugs the end of the cavity with pieces of grass, so they're often sticking out the end in a little bit of an artistic fashion done by the female. It's a solitary wasp, so she acts alone. And the really cool bit is that she paralyzes crickets, things like bush crickets, southern oak bush cricket, for one example. So she paralyzes bush crickets and then sticks them in cavity like a bamboo stem or a hole in dead wood. And she puts them in a series of nest compartments, kind of paralysed crickets, and then lays an egg on them so that her young hatch out the eggs, and then they can feed on a nice paralysed bush cricket or similar species. It is a magnificent thing. It's doing really, really well. We don't know of any ecological impact on the crickets, and if it is impacting populations or not, there's no studies that have been done in the UK. It is all over London at the minute. Harmless little beastie, beautiful thing. It's now in the home county, so spreading beyond London and seemingly doing very well. The adults will drink nectar from a wide range of plants, quite often plants that you'd see in North America or the Americas. Things like solidago, goldenrod, sea holly type species, eryngiums. Virginia creeper, I've seen them using, which is obviously a North American plant. Watercress, hogweed, other umbellifers. That flower form seems to be quite familiar to them. They're incredible things, and they're on the wing now, so do keep an eye out. And as always, please record on the iRecord and iNaturalist apps.
You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website rootsandall.co.uk. Please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support the podcast. Because if you enjoy the show, please help it continue. I also have a GoFundMe where you can make a one-off donation. Even a one-off donation of £1 helps, and I'll be really grateful for your support. So please go to Patreon or GoFundMe and search for Roots and All Podcast.